The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. Every eye in the room was fixed on Donald Trump, who sat at the defense table, his hands neatly folded, his expression unreadable but tense. The former president, well known for his commanding presence and unwavering confidence, was in a setting where he had no control. Unlike the campaign rallies where he dominated the stage, here the rules were set by the judge, and the weight of the legal system pressed heavily upon him. The judge, a seasoned legal expert with decades of experience, sat high on the bench, flipping through a stack of documents. The air was still, except for the occasional shuffling of papers and the soft hum of a distant conversation between attorneys. The prosecution had just presented a crucial piece of evidence, and the defense was preparing its rebuttal. Then, something unexpected happened. The judge, after reviewing the document in hand, let out a small chuckle. At first, it was barely noticeable, a quiet, almost involuntary reaction. But then, unmistakably, there was a smirk, followed by a brief but audible laugh. The sound echoed through the silent courtroom, and within seconds, heads turned. Whispers rippled across the room like a wave. Trump's eyes narrowed, his lips pressed together in a firm line. He was no stranger to critics nor to courtroom battles, but this was something different. The judge, the very person who held power over the proceedings, had just laughed. At what? At whom? Was it the evidence? The argument? Or worse, was it him? Across the room, the prosecution exchanged quick glances, a barely concealed amusement flashing in their eyes. The defense, on the other hand, looked uncomfortable. They shifted in their seats, their polished expressions momentarily slipping. A reporter sitting in the front row furiously scribbled notes, knowing that this moment, this brief, seemingly insignificant reaction, could turn into tomorrow's headline. The tension grew as the judge cleared their throat, attempting to regain composure. But the damage was done. The courtroom had felt it. The public would hear about it. The world would soon be watching. For a man who built his career on confidence and control, this moment was a rare crack in the facade. Trump's eyes flicked toward his lawyer, his expression demanding an answer. What was so funny? Why had the judge reacted that way? His lawyer, an experienced legal strategist, hesitated for just a second too long. That hesitation spoke volumes. Trump, always quick to react, turned back toward the judge, his voice cutting through the silence. "Excuse me," he said, his tone sharp, laced with irritation. "What's that supposed to mean?" The courtroom bristled. It was the kind of moment that made headlines, the kind of moment that cable news networks would play on a loop. The judge, still composed, met Trump's gaze evenly. There was no backtracking, no nervous shifting. Instead, they responded with calm authority. "Well, Mr. Trump, I must admit, I wasn't expecting that argument." A few stifled chuckles rippled through the gallery. Some were quick to cover their mouths, but others let their amusement show. Trump's posture stiffened. He exhaled sharply through his nose, a gesture of barely contained frustration. He had faced opposition before, aggressive reporters, political adversaries, even former allies turned critics, but this was different. This wasn't a debate stage. This wasn't an interview he could walk out of. This was a courtroom, and the laughter, however brief, had shifted the power dynamic. His lips curled into a smirk, a defense mechanism he had mastered over decades. "Oh, so we're making jokes now," he said, shaking his head. "Unbelievable." His lawyer placed a calming hand on his arm, a silent message to let it go. But Trump wasn't one to let things slide. Not when the cameras were rolling. Not when the stakes were this high. The judge had recovered, moving on with the proceedings, but the energy in the room had changed. A legal analyst sitting in the back leaned over to whisper to a colleague, "Have you ever seen a judge react like that?" The defense team, clearly aware of the shift, scrambled to regain control of the narrative. They refocused on their argument, attempting to steer the trial back to legal matters. But the prosecution, emboldened by the moment, leaned back slightly in their chairs, their confidence growing. Meanwhile, the courtroom spectators were buzzing. Reporters took frantic notes, cameras clicked, and political commentators were already drafting their takes. The judge exhaled, maintaining professionalism. "Let's proceed," they said, but the amusement still lingered in their tone. Trump shook his head, muttering under his breath. A reporter caught it and quickly jotted it down. "This is a joke." And just like that, the moment was immortalized. The internet exploded. Within minutes, clips of the judge's reaction were circulating on social media. Some users edited the moment into memes, adding exaggerated laughter and captions like, "When even the judge can't take you seriously." News networks played the footage repeatedly, bringing in legal analysts, political strategists, and former White House insiders to discuss what it all meant. "This is unprecedented," one commentator said. A sitting judge openly laughing during a trial of this magnitude? Others saw it differently. If the arguments weren't so absurd, would the judge even react this way? Supporters and critics clashed online. Hashtags like #TrumpTrial and #JudgeLaughs began trending worldwide. Meanwhile, inside Trump's circle, frustration mounted. Aides scrambled to manage the narrative, knowing that perception often mattered more than reality. Hours later, Trump stood outside the courthouse, facing a sea of cameras and microphones. His supporters gathered, their cheers drowning out the opposing voices. He stepped up to the podium, gripping the sides tightly. His expression was tight, his jaw clenched. "You saw what happened in there," he began, his voice edged with indignation. "This is a disgrace. A total setup." He shook his head, letting the words hang in the air. "A judge in a courtroom, laughing at a former president? I've never seen anything like it. This entire trial is a joke." His supporters erupted in applause, chanting his name. The moment was captured and broadcast worldwide. Some called it a meltdown. Others called it justified outrage. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was undeniable. This trial had just taken a turn no one expected, and the world was watching.